welcome back. So today we are going to look at another air cooler, and this one is quite thick. So this is a Ninja 5 from Scythe. So Scythe sent this over. This is one of their very large air coolers, and we're going to see how this bad boy compares to all the other air coolers, including the Mugen 5 that we tested earlier. We're going to see, does the size matter when it comes to air coolers, because this one's a big boy. So let's look and see what we got. So I'm sure this is a box of miscellaneous hardware. Yes, the fancy, extremely long screwdriver with the tiny little handle. And then, mounting hardware and a fan splitter. So here's the cooler itself, and it is a giant cube with a shuriken on top, which is cool. So I really like what Scythe does with their air coolers. If you remember the Mugen 5 video, all their heat pipes had end caps. Unfortunately, this one does not, but they have this nice little, they took the time to either paint, or looks like it might actually be black anodized, the top cooling fin and give it a design just to make it look a little better, because as you know, with an air cooler, this is the part you stare at. So why not make it look a little cooler than, just a shiny piece of aluminum. So I like what Scythe's doing with their top cooling fin. And this thing looks to be almost symmetrical. Obviously one side has cutouts for fans, and you see you have RAM clearance on either side because this thing is huge. And if you have a chipset that has RAM on both sides, you're gonna need the clearance on both sides of this cooler in order to get over it. And with this cooler, you're also gonna get 2 of the Kaze 120mm fans to set this up in push-pull. So they're quiet fans, I guess you'd say. They spin quite slow compared to other fans on the market. But with an air cooler this big, I'm not sure that's gonna be an issue. So yeah, these fans spin, I think it's like 300 to 800 RPM. So they're gonna be pretty quiet. So we'll see how it does cooling wise. So also on this cooler, the copper cool plate and all the copper heat pipes are nickel plated. So you do have that nice clean finish where everything matches, and you have the nice stark contrast of this black anodized top cooling fin with the cool little shuriken on top, and the whole cooler kind of looks like some sort of ninja star as well, which I think is cool. The cooler itself is 155 millimeters tall, and it is, quite literally a perfect square. So it's 130 millimeters by 130 millimeters. And if you're wondering, these cutouts for the RAM slots. So when the cooler is mounted on your CPU, you're gonna have from cool plate to the top of these cutouts 55 millimeters. So make sure you have that in the back of your mind when you're picking one of these out. You need to know, how tall RAM sticks are you actually using. You don't want to run in a situation where you can't plug in a DIMM slot. Well, I think that's enough yapping. Let's get the fans on this thing, set it up on the old suspension, see how it does. And then after that, got a little surprise for this thing to make it just a little bit cooler. Pun intended. So 30 minutes later, we're back, and let's first talk about the room conditions today, since all of our scores are based off of what the ambient temperature of the room is. So today's room temperature is 20.6, and we are running the Ninja 5 from Scythe. And if it's your first time, the first time you watch one of the videos, we're running this on an i5 2500K at 4.8 gigahertz, and every other cooler, including the water-cooled air cooler, has been run on this platform, trying to cool that overclock. So everything's pretty much even. The only thing that changes really is the room temperature. That is why we look at the delta as well. So this cooler, the idle temperature in this room today was 42.5, which isn't bad. The average package temperature after 30 minutes of Prime 95 on the Scythe Ninja 5 was 65.5, giving us a delta of 44.9, which only put this cooler in 6th place when we look at every other cooler. It is ahead of the Mugen 5, but we expect that given how much bigger it is. But wouldn't we think a cooler of this magnitude, of this size, would do better than, 6th place? Well, possibly. But I think the mainstay of this cooler is the fact that it is literally silent. So the fans that come on this cooler run at 800 RPMs. And I'm telling you, sitting right here, they're currently running full speed. I can't hear them. The only thing I can hear is the old blower fan on the 580, which is facing away from me, and it's at its lowest possible setting. It's not off, it's at 40% or so. But that's the only thing I can hear. This thing, I can't really hear it too much, but these are literally you can't hear. So if you're looking for a cooler that's large and it runs very silently, the Scythe Ninja 5 is gonna be a good pick for you. The only really thing I don't like about it is, you know, it's huge, so it's gonna invade on your DIMM slots, meaning that this fan is gonna have to be elevated above this fan to clear, you know, your DIMM slots, which kind of give it an asymmetrical look, which I'm not a huge fan of. But, you know, maybe not everybody cares about that. And it does perform very good for how quiet it is. But say you don't really care if it's quiet. I mean, obviously if you put it inside of a case, it's gonna dim everything down a little bit, so you maybe have some headroom to make it a little louder. And I will say, kind of boring right now, it's just black. I mean, I do like the black top, we already talked about that, but the gray and, you know, the silver black fans, not too cool. But you have options, and those options are to add some of these. So these are Kaze 120 fans as well, but these are RGB versions, and you know how much I like RGB. And there's another benefit to these fans, because these fans run at 1200 RPMs where these only run at 8. So they should move more air and look better doing it. So we're gonna put these fans on this cooler, run the same test again, and see if we get better thermals with better fans. Let's check it out. But real quick, you might be wondering how I'm gonna power said RGBs on a board that came out before RGBs was really a thing. Well, I got you covered on that too. So if you have an older board like myself, this is a Z77 board, and you're wondering how you're gonna power RGB on that board, you can pick up one of these. This is a simple RGB controller for a 4-pin 12-volt RGB header. Runs off SATA, and you can control your brightness, your scheme if you want it to, you know, flash or cycle through, and you can also control your color. So this is a really cheap add-on you can grab yourself if you need something to control your RGB fans. I'll leave a link down below if you need something like this, but check it out. You might need it. Let's get tested. So the waiting game is over, the tests have been run, the numbers are in, but before we talk about them, let's just take a minute to enjoy how much better this cooler looks now that we put some RGB on it. I really like how, you know, Scythe implemented the RGB on their Kaze fans. Everything's in the hub, shining outwards. It just looks real clean. The colors are, you know, pretty accurate. And I did notice that if you have a fan controller, you can adjust the speed of your fan blades and kind of get them to sync up with the frequency of the RGB, and you can get like cool effects where it looks like your fan's not spinning, or you can kind of start to see the sweep in the RGB color on your fan blades. It's just a little bonus that I think makes everything look just a little bit cooler. So let's talk numbers now. These fans, of course, are faster spinning fans, 1200 RPMs versus the 800. The room temperature is still the same. We're sitting at 20.6 degrees Celsius. Idle temperature is almost exactly the same, 42.4. We dropped like 0.1, but I'd say that's within the margin of error. The real advantage comes in our new average package temperatures. So for this cooler now with the RGB fans, our new temperature is 61.9 degrees Celsius, giving us a delta of 41.3, putting this cooler now in third place. And if we think about the other coolers ahead of it, so you have first place still belongs to the, you know, the EK240 water cooling kit, which I think we're gonna see is probably gonna stay the same until I get another liquid cooling kit in. But second place is the Noctua NH-U12A, which I think is literally like the best air cooler on the market now, and this is not that much farther behind it. Also, this has RGB. Noctua doesn't have RGB, this does, and I think it looks pretty good, and I think it did a good job implementing it into their fans. So I think that if you're looking for a cooler that's gonna perform really well and you want it to be just literally silent, almost passive. I mean, with those fans on it, you can't hear it. There's gonna be things louder in your case, like your power supply or your GPU. So if you're gonna put it in a case and you don't wanna hear it or see it, I'm thinking just leave it in its stock configuration. It keeps things where they need to be cool-wise, and you're never ever gonna hear it. But if you're gonna be looking into your case, you still want a massive cooler that's gonna do a great job cooling, get yourself some RGB fans from Scythe. They're not that much louder. Obviously I can hear them now, but when you put it in a case, I don't think you're ever gonna notice it, and it makes it look that much better. So thank you for watching. This is Major Hardware. Make sure you get subscribed if you haven't been subscribed. This is kind of the thing. We're just looking at cooling stuff, and we just make random things all day long. So get subscribed. We'll see you in the next video.